The Morgan Thomas Show. Brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
Here we go. You are watching and listening to The Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas. We are broadcasting in Greenville, South Carolina, wherever you may be watching or listening. Welcome to the show. We are over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, The Roar, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Joining me again is my good friend, Big Al, Alan Adams. Welcome to the show, Al.
Man, it's good to be here. I tell you, it feels like it's been forever. It's only been 2 short weeks, but I guess getting over the loss and things like that, it seems like it's been forever since we've been on air, but it's good to be back regardless.
You had to go ahead and bring up the loss already.
Rip off the Band-Aid, brother.
I guess so. You got to kind of rip off the Band-Aid. We're going to talk a lot about the Clemson versus LSU game that happened last Monday. A lot of people asking, where were we? Well, we watched the game. Hopefully you did as well. We decided that if Clemson were to win, we would probably stay up late because we wouldn't be able to sleep and do a show. They didn't win, obviously. And so we said, well, we'll just hold on. We'll let it sink in, soak in. So now this is the week after the national championship loss. First loss in 30 games for the Clemson Tigers. And so shocking, but something that we're going to dive a little bit deeper in. Welcome, if you're watching already on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, welcome to the show. Make sure you like the video and you share the video with your friends to get them in. I know we're going to have a lot of people here because we had a ton of people last week, so make sure you share it. Let everybody know that we're going live again. Again, segment number 2 is going to be fun because we're going to do our top 5 all-time Clemson wide receivers. Kind of in honor of T. Higgins leaving the program and going to the NFL, we're going to talk about those elite wide receivers that Clemson had over the past couple of years. Then we're going to get into a little bit of a Clemson basketball update. Obviously, if you watched any of the games, you know that Clemson was able to sweep for the Tobacco Road, beating NC State and beating Duke and North Carolina all in, 2 weeks' time?
Yeah.
So it was pretty awesome there, breaking some records there. First time ever winning in Chapel Hill for the Tigers. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll finish up the show. Segment number 3, we're going to bring on a special guest, Mark Childress, to give you his way too early top 5 for college football. We're going to give you ours as well. Make sure you put it in the comments what you think the top 5 are for wide receivers, top 5 are for the college football teams heading into next year. I know it's just January. We got a long way to go, but, it's fun to speculate. But, Al, before we get into any further, and again, thank you for watching over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, I want to let you know that tonight's show is presented by Black's Tire Inc. in Westminster, South Carolina. Family owned and operated since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help answer your questions, stop by Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Give them a call, 864-647-9292. Again, that's Black's Tire Inc. Let them know that you heard about them from the Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al. Al, I wanted to let everybody know, too, that we have the open phone lines. Let me throw it in on chat, 864-772-6674. So if you want to get in and talk, open phone lines right now. We have about 2 or 3 lines available for you to get in before Mark gets in later on in the show. So come on and get in now. Tell us what your thoughts are, and we'll discuss the national championship game. We'll discuss next year's team, and we'll discuss whatever you want to discuss. So come on, get in on the line, 864-772-6674. Make sure you like and share the video. Al, I got about 6 people over on YouTube. Kind of low right now. I know it is Martin Luther King Day, so maybe people are out and about. What you got over on Facebook?
It's actually looking up from when the show first started. So right now we got about 21 watching with us. We got some of our regulars. Your folks are watching. John Valiant's watching. Trey Carter's with us. My mom and my wife are with us as well. Al Coon, Kevron Harris, of course, who's always with us. Let's see who else we got here. I saw Kayla Williams was watching with us, and Evan, of course, one of our regulars as well. So it's good to have everybody with us. I think Morgan said this before, and it's a very important thing. When he says share the show, that's the most important thing you can do for the show. Yes, the likes are great and everything that is like that, but the share is where it really gets the word out. It's where it gets it to all your friends as well, and we can really increase the viewership that way. So that would be much appreciated for sure, but we obviously appreciate the support in general. But yeah, we're doing pretty good over here, man. I think that's a pretty solid start. It was looking pretty rough there at the beginning. I was thinking we had a lot of fair weather Clemson fans, and that's not what I like to see. So it's good to see those numbers tick up a little bit.
Well, I'm sure you'll have a couple fall off in the sense that, having a first loss in 2 years probably let a couple of the bandwagon people move on. But for most of the majority of Clemson fans, I know that Clemson Nation kind of seemed like on social media that they were thankful for what the Tigers had done and where they have come. I wrote an article over on Sports Illustrated, Clemson Sports Illustrated, that talked about the last 10 years, the decade of the Clemson Tigers, Al. Mm-hmm. Did you know that I write a little bit for Clemson Sports Illustrated? I don't think I've even said this to you.
I've heard a little bit about it.
But so Zach Lentz over there, he needed some help, and he kind of hired a couple people. Now I'm just on a trial period, so they're not paying me anything. But I get to kind of, break my keyboard in a little bit. But talked about the Clemson, one of my articles recently was talking about Clemson's 10-year transformation. They asked Dabo Swinney after the game what one word would he describe the past decade for the Clemson Tigers, and he said transformative, if that's even a word, kind of jokingly. I don't know if it was or not, but the transformation that's happened from Clemson from then, when it was Dabo Swinney's first recruiting class, first full season, to now, 10 years later, has been pretty amazing, to say the least. If you look back, Al, 2009, I think, was like a 9-3 season. Mm-hmm. The Tigers had Kyle Parker still had C.J. Spiller. They weren't able to get over the hump. C.J. Spiller went off. I know you and I think we were watching this game together. C.J. Spiller went off in the ACC championship game. I think he had 4 touchdowns, and they still lost the game. And
I was actually there.
Yes, you were there. I was watching it from Audrey's dad's house. That's right. And it was like 3. They lost by 3 in Atlanta, right?
It was in Tampa, I think.
Tampa? Okay, so I don't even remember exactly where it was at, but they lost by, what was it, 38-35 or something like that, really
Yeah, we couldn't
close.
get any stops at all.
Uh, but CJ Spiller, I just remember that because of him. I knew it was his last game. It was kind of bittersweet to just see him just annihilate the field, just go all
Yeah.
over, destroy everyone, and then they come up short. To see what Clemson has done now, that next year, 2010, was the start of, it was still Kyle Parker, no CJ Spiller. It was the start of Taj Boyd as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Hopkins starting to get into some motion there. And then they went 6-7 and lost to the South Florida Bulls.
Yeah.
Not only that South Florida team that they lost to, but the one that Jeff Scott has gone to be the head coach for next year. Kind of interesting how things all work out, right? But
No doubt.
they lost that game, went 6-7. But oh man, there were so many players in that class. I know you and I went to the recruiting wrap up because we talk about this all the time. Where it was like 100 people there, and now the recruiting wrap up's like 5,000 people.
Yeah.
But just that laying of that foundation of those players: Spencer Shuey, Malachi Goodman, Catanzaro, Boyd, Hopkins, Martavis Bryant, all these guys in there that would eventually go on, Vic Beasley, go on to do so well for the Tigers and kind of build that. They never won a championship. They never won any big-time college football national championship games or playoff games, but they were a huge starting point for the Tigers. A lot of people say that 4th and 16 play was the turning point for the Tigers.
Yeah.
So it was pretty interesting to see. I did have a lot of people out in the comments after the LSU game, though, kind of going back to this week and looking at kind of the end of the decade. Had a lot of Clemson fans mention that this loss really wasn't that heartbreaking for them. I thought that was kind of weird. You would think after 30 games or 29 games of not losing, and then to lose one, you would think you'd be pretty devastated. You'd think you'd be frustrated, mad, maybe throwing some things, maybe yelling at some of your pets. But a lot of fans on Twitter and Facebook, social media in general, were just saying, "Hey, the better team won. I'm not really that upset about it." Is that kind of the feeling you had? I kind of felt that way.
Yeah, it's a lot different than the one in 2015 against Alabama. That's kind of one where you walk away thinking that Clemson was the better team. Obviously, they got hit with a kickoff return in that game. They got hit with a trick or an onside kick that they were not ready for. They were ill prepared to handle. I think you had that was another one where OJ Mayo, I believe, got wide open down the sideline, which was disappointing. I think I got that name right, but I can't remember for sure. I know it was Alabama's tight end that just ran all over.
OJ Howard.
Howard, there you go. That's right. OJ Howard. So that's disappointing. I mean, you really walked away from that game, in my opinion, thinking that Clemson was the better team. Watson led a heck of a comeback, and almost kind of pulled that one out. I think he just needed a little more time. But this one was different. This one had a different feel to it. Look, I got to be honest. It was tough going in this game. Everybody's been talking about the LSU offense and how unstoppable the offense was. And Clemson did a great job at the beginning. We did good pinning them deep, got them, deep in their own territory. We were getting a lot of stops. It was looking good. We got up 17-7, so things were really looking up. And I'm thinking, man, could I be wrong 2 years in a row? Because I thought Alabama had a good chance of beating Clemson last season. And then this game, it's like, well, Clemson has proven me wrong again. And obviously that's a great thing. Anytime Clemson wins and can prove me wrong, if I'm, going against them, I'm all for it. But, that kind of soon came to an end. Clemson got that 10-point lead, never could stretch it out. I think they got the 17-7 lead, and LSU scored within like 5 plays of the next drive. It was just, there's a lot to unpack with this game. Look, first of all, you got to take your hat off to Joe Burrow. I mean, that was the single greatest quarterback performance I think I've ever seen in a college game. Every throw was just right on point. It didn't even the ones they dropped. Okay, they dropped some of the passes, especially early, as receivers were having a little trouble getting going. But the throws were there. They either dropped them or our DBs were just draped all over them, making a good play. And of course, those kind of ended later. They get the step on us. Whether it was a push off or whether it wasn't. Physical play by the wide receivers. They were getting a little bit of separation, and that's all Joe Burrow needed. He didn't need a big window at all. He was fitting it in there on a dime, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch. Unfortunately, not for us Clemson fans. But this was just a game full of, momentum swings, game-changing plays, that kind of thing. But there's a ton of thoughts I have on this game. I was a little disappointed. Clemson didn't really try to score at the beginning of the game. I thought they would need to take an early lead. And they, got the ball in plus territory, really the first two possessions, and they punted inside the 40-yard line on their first two possessions. I was not a big fan of that. I did not think that was the right thing to do. And, of course, like I said, they still got a 10-point lead eventually. But it wasn't enough. You felt like in this game you were going to need more than that when Joe Burrow finally got going. And that's exactly what happened. The opening drive of the second half was good. We got a 3-and-out, got a quick score. I was like, man, okay, we still got a chance at this thing. That going into half, you didn't feel real good about things, but coming out, I was like, all right, now it's time to take over. It's time for Clemson to do what Clemson does in these big games and find a way to win. It just wasn't the case. I thought Joe Burrow's 3rd and 19 conversion, goodness gracious, it was a heartbreaker before half. I believe they scored that touchdown. It was 21-17. I think they scored the touchdown before half after he converted a 3rd and 19. That's something Venables just doesn't give up. And of all plays, the quarterback run. Are you kidding me? That was tough to take. That was a huge momentum swing in the game there. I thought that was a huge play. Some other big plays I think was Nolan Turner's drop what would have probably been a pick six. That was kind of hard to take as well, especially since it happened a couple of times in the game before that against Ohio State. And then he kind of turned it around with the interception to seal it. You'd hope he would kind of make the play on that ball. And Higgins' offensive pass interference, of course, that's a hotly debated call. Didn't go the Tigers' way, and it's just kind of unfortunate. But Clemson was down at that point. They were kind of trying to make it back into the game. But there's a lot of stuff to unpack in this game. Trevor Lawrence did not have a good game. Did not have a Trevor Lawrence game. He picked a bad day to have a bad day. And unfortunately, it was the national championship. I think a lot of questionable play calls were made. Of course, I've been kind of down on the play calling all year. I try to downplay it as much as possible, but I'm just not a real fan of what I see. I see Trevor Lawrence making a bunch of very difficult throws. And it's not the throws he can't make. He's made them plenty of times, and he'll continue to make them. But he was off bad that night, and I thought you needed to get him some easier throws over the middle. Braden Galloway was open. Etienne was having a great game, and I thought he was underutilized, and it was just tough to take. It was just tough to take. So I know there's a ton of thoughts you have on this game, and so kind of what did you think about Trevor Lawrence and the play calling as well? I know you had some thoughts on that. I kind of want to get your take on all that.
Oh, you starting off with a controversial one for me.
Yeah.
Can we go back to punting on the 42-yard or 45-yard line? Can we go back to that?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to do better in 2020 of answering your question very directly and not going on a tangent here. So that's part of my performance agreement with myself going into season 2. As if you didn't know, this is season 2 now. Right. But for Trevor Lawrence, it's hard to say. I just wrote up an article about the wide receiver core and doing a grade for them. And I overall gave them a B+, and it's hard to grade the wide receivers bad because a lot of the wide receivers has to do with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And their performance is hinging on Trevor Lawrence's performance. And then the same thing with the play calling. Now, I want to preface this with, if you're watching on Twitter, don't get upset. We know that we're not associated with the team. This is a fan-driven show that we try to make high quality, and we try to give you our opinions on what happened the previous week of Clemson football. It just happens to be the national championship game. We are not saying that we are some better than Tony Elliott or Trevor Lawrence or Dabo Swinney. I hate that I have to say that, but really, if you don't, Al, people will jump down your throat about it. I mean, they will jump all over us about the fact that we don't know what we're talking about, and we are a fan show, so we're coming from a fan's perspective. Do I sit here and sit in front of film all day? No, I have the same film that you do, which is replaying the ESPN on my YouTube TV. But what I can say is from my perspective, I think you have to go with what Trevor Lawrence said about himself. He said that he was off. He said that he had a bad game. Like you said, it was a bad day to have a bad game, and he had a bad game. He threw the ball high. He exposed Amari Rodgers to something that could have really hurt him pretty bad. I mean, he was roughed up, being exposed over the middle. one of the few over the middle type plays that he would go to. And we knew that this was kind of a problem. We saw this in other games where he would lean more on the outside guys. Now, is that because of design? When I watched and looked back at the UNC tape, I saw that some of the plays they were just sending everybody deep. And so is that necessarily Trevor Lawrence's fault? I don't think so. I think that you have to be a little bit more creative than sending 4 people deep and then having Travis Etienne as your check down.
Yeah.
You have to do more than that. Now, another thing that I don't like about play calling in the sense that they had Travis Etienne doing well in the running game and then they disappeared from him. 5 plays, go down for a touchdown coming out of halftime. I told Audrey, this is great. They did the adjustments necessary to stop them. They did the adjustments necessary to score and run it down on them, and did it within just a couple of plays. But then they went away from it again.
Yeah.
Braden Galloway had a huge 42-yard pass, disappeared after that. This was something that Deshaun Watson was able to exploit against teams like Alabama by throwing it down the middle to the tight end or to whoever was there crossing the field. And I feel like Trevor Lawrence, more often than not, ignores that. He leans on T. Higgins a lot, and when T. Higgins is not on it, which T. Higgins was on it, he just happened to have his one touchdown catch get overturned, I think, over a bad pass interference call. But really, if you're an LSU fan or Ohio State fan and you just happen to be watching this, you're probably saying you deserved it because of what happened in the Ohio State game with controversial plays. I get it. All things seem to work out, karma, whatever you want to call it. But what I will say is that I think that was a touchdown, and that would have brought them within 10 points. Wouldn't have made it any closer than that, but they still would have had an uphill battle. I don't think they would have won the game.
Sure.
Clemson, I don't think Clemson got blown out. A lot of LSU fans on YouTube saying Clemson got blown out. Just because you glance at it and see 40-20 doesn't mean they were blown out. 17 points, I wouldn't necessarily call 17 points a blowout, especially if you're going to call Oklahoma game a blowout. Now, that was definitely a blowout, but then you can't turn around and say a 17-point game was a blowout, especially a game where you had to come back from behind double digits. And it was the first time you were down double digits all year. So Clemson had the ability to get the lead, which was something that a lot of people doubted they were going to be able to do. Mm-hmm. Clemson also had the ability had the opportunities to take advantage of that lead and grow it even further. And like you mentioned before, at the beginning of the game, it was like, you've got to be kidding me. Burrow is backed against his own end zone. Muse, Simmons are all stuffing them. Skalski stuffing them. And we're getting, the first time, like you said, was on the 42-yard line. The first time I think was 33. The second time was 42. And the third time was on the 25. So it was a full time that time. But you're based 2 times out of that 3 of the first 3 possessions, you've got the half a field almost to work with, and you can't do anything. Third down was terrible. I mean, 1 for 11 from third down.
Yeah,
it's just completely horrible. They did not use Travis Etienne on third down at all, and I think rotation was a little bit weird too. Why in the world, with the game on the line, do you have Ngata, Rogers, Chalk, and Ladson?
Yeah.
I mean, with the game on the line, now the other team on the other end, they're keeping Chase and Jefferson and Moss in that game, the entire game almost. Mm-hmm. And they're definitely, if they're going to sub out, they're not going to sub out the entire staff.
Right.
Now, the receiver core, that confuses me a lot with what Clemson does. I don't know the answer. I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I don't know, but I'm just saying that it's weird to go out there and see where Trevor Lawrence needs to hit somebody that he's familiar with, that he's in sync with, and you've got 3 guys that aren't the starters. Most of them aren't the starters other than Rodgers. And that was a little bit weird to me, because if you're on the defense, you're thinking, well, they're going to throw it to Amari Rodgers or they're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only 2 options. They're not going to give it to, these other guys that barely play. I mean, compared. I say barely play compared. But if you go to Sports Illustrated's website and you see my article about the wide receivers, last year, Alan, I thought this was really, really shocking. Last year, the top 4 wide receivers were used 28%, 25%, 22%, and 21%.
Yeah.
And that was Ross, Higgins, Rodgers, and Renfro. So they were very evenly used. This year, you've got Higgins, Ross, ETN, and Amari Rodgers. Now, granted, Rodgers was hurt for a few games, kind of coming back. Ngata and stuff, those guys were in there, so they were taking away some of the catches. They were diluting some of it.
Right.
But it was like 35% passes to Higgins, 30% passes to Ross, and then 15% to ETN, 10% to Rodgers. So basically, if you look at that on the outside looking in, you're thinking all Trevor Lawrence does is throw to the top two guys, which if you really think about it, if you step back and say something and say that out loud, Trevor Lawrence primarily throws to two guys.
Yep.
Has it not been the truth? Has it
Yep.
really not? And has it been the play calling? I don't know. Has it been Trevor Lawrence? I don't know. But one thing for sure, you couple that targeting the main two guys with then turning around and throwing it high on almost every pass. On the flip side, LSU, Joe Burrow dropping dimes on every play. I mean, what really frustrated me, Al, and I wanted to, I don't know if you heard this, you caught this from Chris Fowler, and I love Chris Fowler. I think he's great. But he was like, this is what LSU is all about. This is why they're so difficult to defend, because if you stop their one guy, they have another guy. If you stop that guy, they have another guy, and then they have another guy. And I turned around and I told Audrey, I said, why can't Clemson say the same thing?
Yeah.
What Clemson could very easily say the same thing. They have just as many talented guys, but it didn't seem like many of those talented guys were used.
Right. Now that's a fair point. And that I think that comes down to something you mentioned a couple minutes ago. Is it does it have anything to do with the play call? And are they trying to get Trevor Lawrence to take those first that first read or two? If he sees Higgins on the outside, is he going to go to Higgins? Whether it be an out route or a back shoulder pass, or does he go deep to him, something like that? Obviously, him and Ross are the guys. They're the ones that everybody was talking about. And I actually think Ross had a little bit of a down season compared to what everybody expected. When he showed out so bad in the game last year against Alabama, I mean the one-handed catches, the ridiculous move he made on the corner and took it to the house. People were expecting him almost to be kind of the alpha this year. They were expecting him to be the main receiver this year, even over T. Higgins. And obviously that didn't happen. Higgins showed that he was the man and he was going to be the man for sure. But maybe I don't know what happens beyond those guys. I think that's an excellent point because Clemson's got the horses to run out there. Ngata's a talented kid. Ladson a talented kid. Amari Rodgers is. And I'll tell you, I wanted to get your thought on this real quick. I don't know if you noticed this, and if you didn't, that's fine. You can kind of gloss over it. But I didn't think Rodgers looked really aggressive in this game. When he came back from his injury, he was plowing people over. He looked like he was running with a purpose and glad to be back. And, he'd worked so hard to get back. But the couple times he caught the ball, to me, he'd run towards the sidelines and just kind of pull up and run out of bounds instead of, making a move inside or lowering his head and making some contact. I was kind of disappointed because he hasn't been that guy this year. He hasn't been that guy in his career. And it just kind of seemed like he was avoiding that a little bit. That was a little frustrating. Now, let's be honest. That didn't change the game in any way, shape, form, or fashion, I don't believe. But it was just something to take note of, I thought. I didn't know exactly what was going on there. If he was a little more hurt, if he hadn't, completely come back from his injury, had he tweaked it or something like that, I wasn't sure. It just looked a little strange to me. I don't know if you noticed that at all. It's just something I took note of.
I didn't really notice it, but I would say that, he got rocked. If that was after the time he got rocked across the middle, even Joe Burrow got rocked during the game, and a couple of plays after that, you're like, okay, maybe Clemson has a chance now because he seemed to be off, but then he kind of got back into it, worked his way out of it, or worked into it. I didn't really see any problems from Rodgers in the sense that I also haven't rewatch the game. I don't really like to rewatch losses. Dabo Swinney mentioned the same thing. It's going to be difficult to rewatch, but it's going to be something necessary in order to build on next year. Chat saying that they feel like Ladson and Ngata were going to do better, and they hope to do better next year. I feel like that Ngata didn't step up as much as I would like him to do with T. Higgins out. I felt like if T. Higgins was out of the game, the Clemson offense was lost in a lot of ways.
Yes. They
did not seem to be able to move the ball if Higgins was not there. There was a lot of reliance on him. 35% of the plays are going through him, passing plays are going through him. And so when he's not there, he kind of took on that role of that third down guy. And as far as you said, Justin Ross, I wanted to hint back on that too. did he take a step back? If you read my article, which I think you did, it sounds like you did, but I looked at it, Al. He had 150 yards less than last year. He had 2 touchdowns less than last year and 20 more catches than last year. So he was getting more. He was getting targeted more, having more catches, but statistically went backwards on more catches. So that is a concern in the sense that when T. Higgins was out, where was Ross to take over? And with both of them on the field, I thought this is going to be that time where they dominated against Alabama, where it's like you stack Higgins and Ross right next to each other on the same side of the field, and the defense is like, oh no, what am I going to do? Especially with the fact that Galloway came into the game and was catching the ball and stretching the middle of the field. I thought that 3-hit combination and then running Rodgers across the field, short passes and even ETN. I thought that was something that was going to be successful, and it didn't seem to work out. I don't know. It seemed like Clemson just couldn't figure it out as far as the offense goes. Big disappointment when you come to wide receivers. It was the tale of 2 seasons. Yeah. The regular season, dominant. 4 or 3 wide receivers were in the top 30 of the ACC as far as receiving yards. Mm-hmm. In the postseason, not one wide receiver caught a touchdown pass. Isn't that amazing to think? Yeah. Ohio State, LSU, Clemson with their, like Mark Packer says, frisbee catching dogs, and Trevor Lawrence. It's not like they have an A.J. McCarron who's just sitting there going to hand it off to Derrick Henry. Right. They got a guy who can move out the pocket and throw the ball deep. And now, granted, T. Higgins had a touchdown called back. I get it. And they do have an electric running back. But to not have any receiving touchdowns from the wide receivers and to have Travis Etienne get 2 receiving touchdowns was very weird for me. I don't think if you went into this season if we look back at how we talked after destroying Alabama, I don't think anybody felt like Higgins and Ross would be non-existent in the end zone in next year's playoffs. Yeah. I just don't. It was very shocking to me to see that. Overall, it's still hard to say. Was it the play calling? We probably will never know. Was it the effort given? I don't think so. I think that Dabo Swinney and company make sure that they recruit the right players that are going to give the right effort. But there's definitely a chemistry problem there. Trevor Lawrence has got to find his go-to guys. With Hunter Renfrow gone, where is that go-to guy with him? Where is that guy that he just connects with? Maybe they should move them into the same apartment and make them play Madden together. Make them go get pizza together. Maybe they should do that because they got to get on the same page again for Clemson to get back. I think Clemson will get back. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But let's jump over to our YouTube channel to check in who's there and our Facebook channel. Again, we're talking about Clemson versus LSU the week after. We've had a chance to kind of sit back, let it soak in, talk about it, and discuss it. We got a lot of things going over on chat on YouTube. Clemson Carson's in. Thank you so much. Rick's in as well. Dale's in. Some people are saying was Jeff Scott distracted because of his change in position? Yeah. I don't think so. I think Jeff Scott did what was necessary. I think he had been with the team long enough in order to know what's expected. He'd been in the playoffs long enough, been in that situation long enough. If anything, Clemson had a huge advantage as far as coaching staff is concerned. Yeah. And experience in the playoffs. So if I don't think I'm not going to go down that path. I don't think he was distracted. I think that there was a lot of things going on. Mainly, LSU was a better team, you know. But and LSU was playing, lights out. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't miss any calls. He didn't miss any passes most of the time. He's just dropping them right over their shoulder. And Chase was just looking amazing. And once he got Jefferson and Chase, and then got Moss involved, that was when I knew it's over, guys. We're just going to try to hang in as close as we can. Or Clemson's just going to try to hang in as close as they can, and let the better team win.
Yeah.
But we got 6 people over on YouTube right now, even though it's a small 6. They're big time in the chat room, so thank you so much for the support over there. Make sure you like and share the video. I shared it on TigerNet. If you got anywhere else you'd like to share it, make sure you share it on YouTube. Al, what you got over on Facebook?
Right now we got about 19. I saw my sister was in here. I saw Spencer Scroggins, Peggy Pettigrew, Bill Lanham is in here as well. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those new menu options, by the way, Bill. See Jonathan Gilbert in there with us. And let's see, Josh Allen, my man Josh, one of my former youth members. And then we got somebody else in here too, I believe. John Langford. I mean, I hadn't heard from that guy in forever. I think he was in a math class back in high school, if that's the same John Langford that I'm thinking about. So we got some good support over here. We need to get some more chat going. They were busy. They were early. You know, they were coming in early. They were kind of raring to go, getting in here, getting their thoughts in, and now they've kind of peaked out. So I'm looking to get them kind of jump started again. I'm hoping this next topic will get them going.
Yeah, I think, Al, let's just go right into it because
Sure.
if you don't know, we normally I normally make this show into a podcast, which you can check out the podcast still anywhere you listen to podcasts, but I also make the show into a podcast for the Roar. But because of basketball season with women's basketball, men's basketball, there's just not a lot of Thursday nights for our show to be aired on the Roar on 105.5 or 97.5. So right now we're on hold with the radio to try to let the basketball season settle in and pass by before we get back in on the Roar. We got some things we're going to try to work in studio maybe. So just keep an eye out for that. But for right now, just a traditional show. And you can check out the replays over on YouTube, Facebook, and if you want to listen to the podcast version, anywhere you listen to podcasts. But before we get into our second topic, which is top 5 all-time Clemson wide receivers, I think it's going to be really fun. Al and I had a good time talking about this one and discussing this because Clemson has had a lot of really good receivers in a short amount of time. But I wanted to tell you about Tiger Sports Shop. You know, we like to make sure that we have a great production for you, but we also like to dress for success, not just dress for success, but TS for success. That's Tiger Sports for Success, tigersports.com. You can get all the Clemson apparel you need there. I mean, they got a giant store over on Tiger Boulevard and a really, really nice store downtown Clemson. Every Saturday, the Saturday before the first Saturday, my family goes down there and buys a bunch of stuff from them and gets our Clemson swag before we go in so we can look fresh and clean with our new orange gear going into the season. You know, Al, even though we only do it from our living room, but but you know, so we like it. We hope you go and enjoy them and shop there. Like I said, if you're not in Clemson, you can go to tigersports.com, check them out there. Let them know that the Morgan Thomas Show sent you. Thank you so much, Julie and Sean, for supporting the show through the 2019 season and now into the 2020 season. I right now have a Nike shirt from their location, and it's kind of like a purple and white striped shirt, Clemson Tiger Paw on the chest there. Al, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm wearing. This is actually the Tiger Sports Shop brand that they have coming out. You know, they have all these nice shirts. They're coming out trying to kind of get in more and more with these shirts. It's the same quality as the big name brands, the Cutter and Bucks and the Antiguas, but it's a little more affordable price. So this is one of my new favorite shirts. I walked in, they had this kind of in the center of the store when we walked in several months back, and I was like, I gotta have it. I gotta have it. You know, there was a white version, an orange version, and my family was like, you gotta have the orange version. So orange version it is, and that's what I got. So again, make sure you go check them out. Sean and Julie over there at Tiger Sports Shop. You can get in downtown Clemson. You can get them on US 123 bypass. But either way, you won't be disappointed. There is a million things to choose from. It's always a dangerous thing for me to go in one of those stores, but a good thing, a good kind of dangerous. All right. So let's check out. Hey, Morgan, I just saw that you jumped in on the Facebook feed, by the way. We appreciate you joining us. So it's great to have our show host with us as well. So it's an awesome day as usual.
I can't get anything by you here. I'm going to have to go private. I just wanted to check in and see who's talking and see what's going on. Make sure you're doing our Facebook group justice. We've got 23 people over on Facebook. I'm so proud of that. Man, our YouTube channel really usually catches up by now. Kind of struggling, but no, if you're not watching, we're so diluted really now. We've got Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, anywhere really on social media. I know a fan said we're everywhere but TikTok, and we're working on our dance moves right now, so eventually we could get on TikTok as well. But Al, let's get over into segment number 2.
Let's do it.
And that is our top 5. We kind of do a lot of top 5s over the offseason, but this is a top 5 all-time Clemson wide receivers. I thought it was kind of fun, mainly because there was a big-time wide receiver that I will tell you is on my list that decided to enter the NFL draft this year. T. Higgins is no longer going to be on the team. He is moving on to the NFL, and we wish him luck. Go Tigers, and we hope you do well in the NFL. We know you'll do well because of how well you did for Clemson and how much better you left the program than when you started. So thank you so much, T. Higgins, for everything you did. Not only that, Al, but Clemson landed its biggest recruit. You know, we love recruiting news here. Clemson landed its biggest recruit, kind of like a repeat of 2009, where Travis Etienne joined the Tigers again, just like C.J. Spiller did back in 2009. So Travis Etienne, welcome back to your senior season. We're excited about it. 2-time back-to-back ACC Player of the Year. Hopefully going to be 3-time. I don't think anybody's ever done 3-time ACC Player of the Year, but just quietly, we hope they use you a little more in the playoffs, at least in the national championship game. Okay, we've said it. We got it out there. I know fans wanted to get that out there. So in case you're listening, Travis Etienne or Mama Etienne, we appreciate you guys' support, and we are so happy that you're back. I think it's a good move because the running back group right now is kind of diluted.
Yep.
And next year is going to be a little bit better for him. Chuba Hubbard also decided to stay. So and Najee Harris from Alabama. So a couple of other guys decided to stay. So the big running back class was split. A few people stayed, a few people departed to the NFL. But I think it's going to be a better choice for Etienne. I think it's going to end up being him and Trevor Lawrence, top 2 guys getting drafted in the next year's class. That's going to be amazing to be able to see that. But back to the wide receivers. Again, T. Higgins is out, but we wanted to start off with our top 5 all-time wide receivers. So let us know in the comments section what you think your top 5 all-time Clemson wide receivers could be in any decade. But I'll tell you, I'm pretty sure Alan and I are more of the newer age wide receivers. So no disrespect to the old school Clemson Tiger fans out there. But I'm going to start us off with my number 5.
Yep.
And I do this every time, Al. I don't number my stuff. All right, so let me go through here. Let me look at my numbers. I'm gonna make numbers real quick. All right. I got my number 5. I got my 5 in.
Mm-hmm.
So my number 5 is actually somebody who wasn't a big time recruit, who ended up being really good in the NFL this year for the Raiders, and was probably the best walk on in college football history, and that is Hunter Renfrow. Mm-hmm. Obviously, number 13, big time number 13, national championship winner. Go-to third down guy, and he was just amazing for his career at Clemson, and we're just so thankful for what he did for the Tigers. So I've got Hunter Renfrow as my number 5. Who do you got?
Well, I know you said we were going to kind of keep this, to the new age for the most part, but I am going to go old school on you for the first one. I have my number 5 is Perry Tuttle. He was there from 1978 to 1981. He had 2,500 total yards, over 2,500 total yards, and 17 touchdowns. Like, he didn't have, quite the measurables that some of the guys we have now have. It seems like every receiver we have now is like 6'4", 6'5". It's insane. He was closer to the 6 foot range, I'm sure. And he actually played in a time where obviously they weren't passing the ball as much. So those are pretty impressive. Now, he was there for 4 years. So it's a little bit different than some of these guys who are 3 and done in the NFL. But I think a lot of that needs to be taken into account. And I think he deserves a spot on this list for sure. And you have no idea how hard it was keeping Hunter Renfrow off of this list. Okay. That's a really tough thing, and a lot of Tiger fans are going to be really upset about that. But and we've had such good wide receivers, and the stats just aren't quite there for Renfrow. He wasn't the big play guy usually. Obviously, he made some big plays where we've seen him play. But Tuttle takes my spot at number 5.
Wasn't a big play guy. Big Game Hunter was his nickname, Alan. I mean,
that's not exactly what I meant by big play. Long play. Long play guy. Yeah, he made all kinds of big plays.
The fact that you left him off basically ends your contract with the show.
I understand.
So it's been a great run.
It's been real.
You made it one episode into season 2. But my number 4 is a guy who also won a national championship with the Clemson Tigers. And he made some miraculous catches for the Tigers in a national championship game against Alabama. you talked about him a couple of weeks ago, but Mike Williams, when we talked about those big playoff moments, he was in like, what, 4 of them? So you got to give Mike Williams some props there. I actually have a picture of him with like 10 people from the crew of Clemson. You got a bunch of big names there: Hopkins, Watson, Hall, Lawson, and Boyd, Spiller, a bunch of guys there representing the Clemson Tigers from I don't know what game that was. It looks like maybe Clemson. It looks like national championship. Maybe that was the LSU game. I think that was the LSU game, but I thought that was a really cool picture from their Twitter account. So that's Mike Williams, obviously second most all time for Clemson with 21 touchdowns for for that stat sheet. So I'm liking Mike Williams. He was a big time guy, and he got hurt that one year where he ran into the goalpost. You remember that? But then came back and dominated for the Tigers. So give me Mike Williams at number 4.
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100%. I have Mike Williams at number 4 as well. He was there from 13 to 16, 27 total yards and 21 touchdowns. Like you said, he played a huge role in getting Clemson that national championship, back into Death Valley where it belongs. So that was a huge deal. He made a couple of huge plays. I will always remember those plays for sure. And we talked about him on our previous top 5s as well, like you said. So he was just a real physical guy who could go up, high point the ball, even when you were on him. You weren't covered, or you might have been on him, but he can still make the catch. He went over the top of people. He got physical. He put his body in the way. He was just able to make those grabs that a lot of people just can't make anymore. So I think you have to have him on this list. Like you said, he had all those stats, and even though he was there for 4 years, he was out for that 2015 season.
And then number 3 for me is, I said, the guy that just ended up declaring for the NFL, and that is T. Higgins, tied for most touchdowns all time for Clemson Tigers with 27, and led the way for the Tigers this year. Was first team All-ACC selection this year for the Tigers. Ended up being that go-to guy for Trevor Lawrence after Hunter Renfrow left. Not typically something that your outside wide receiver, your number 1 guy, would be as your third down go-to guy, but he was that guy. He was so consistent and so reliable to the point where when he wasn't on the field, something was up, and the Tigers looked completely different and struggled at times, and that's just how important he was. So for me, number 3 was T. Higgins.
I agree with you once again. I gave Higgins the nod over Mike Williams for a couple of reasons. His speed and athleticism are just insane. And I thought, Mike Williams, could get those contested jump balls a little bit better than T. Higgins maybe. But Higgins was just better at getting open. A lot of his big plays, he just got separation because he was that good. His route running was good. His speed was better. He logged 7 more touchdowns over his career. He averaged 3 more yards a catch than Williams did as well. Higgins was that alpha receiver at Clemson this past season, and he's going to need to be replaced if Clemson's going to make another run at it next year.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people in chat on YouTube are saying that that's a big concern for the Tigers. A lot of people said that on my Twitter account when I posted that article about the wide receiver core, that they're very concerned to who's going to take his place just because of how awesome he was and how much of a critical role he played in the 2019 season. Number 2 for me is a guy who ended up being one of the best wide receivers to ever play in the NFL, and he's got a lot of years left, and he gets to hook up with Deshaun Watson just about every Sunday during the football season, and that is DeAndre Hopkins. He is my number 2, second overall in receiving yards at 3,020 yards for the Clemson Tigers. I got a picture of him there from his Twitter account from the Texans game against the Chiefs. We won't talk about that game because it was kind of a heartbreaker for the Texans fans there. But DeAndre Hopkins just lighting it up in the NFL. He might not like who my number 1 is because I know he made some comments about not being seen as the best Clemson receiver. I don't think he was the best Clemson receiver statistically, but I think he was. You can't state enough how important he was. Obviously, the 4th and 16 play was the pivotal moment that most fans look back to and say that connection between him and Taj Boyd was so important to continue growing everything. And then, like I said, he was one of those players in 2009, 2008 that helped develop this team and the culture to grow it. And he was a hometown guy, which was even better.
Yeah, I have number 2. I have Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins was just, man, what a receiver. I mean, when Clemson recruited him and was able to snag him, we knew it was going to be big things for the receiving core. His explosiveness was second to none. I mean, he was kind of the CJ Spiller at wide receiver. He just had that burst about him. Everybody remembers the first touchdown pass that he had. It was just absolutely incredible. He blew by the guy. and was able to make the play. He just kind of splashed onto the scene. We weren't really used to having a lot of 5-star players, and he's kind of one of those that really made his mark early, and it was a lot of fun to watch. So Sammy Watkins had a lot going for him. Obviously, he had a big game the other night in the playoffs as well, so that was good to see. I didn't take that into account. I don't take into account NFL careers when I'm making my all-time Clemson list, but he was definitely one of my top two, and it was a tough decision between these top two players for sure. So it took me a while to figure out how I wanted to go about it, and kind of deliberated on it and seeing who I was going to make number one between Hopkins and Watkins, because I don't really think there's a whole lot of debate to be had there. But I have Sammy Watkins number two.
Yeah, I know you say, I know who you pick now. And I think you know who I picked, which is just basically swapping the top two guys, which is great because we get to see two perspectives. But for me, he's the career-leading receiving yards and 3,391 receiving yards for the Clemson Tigers. So I really kind of went on the statistics there and leaned on that. Obviously, he was very explosive, a big-time 5-star guy, and was able to make some big plays against teams like Georgia to help get Clemson on that national stage and kind of show other wide receivers how explosive Clemson was in the passing game, and couple him with Chad Morris and those guys. I think it would have been amazing to see what he could have done with I believe Deshaun Watson. I don't think Deshaun ever had a chance with him. It would have been amazing to see him with Deshaun, but Sammy Watkins for me, my number one guy. But I'm telling you, it's 1A, 1B. I can't really say one's better than the other than just on a piece of paper. So I went with Sammy Watkins, and I'm assuming that your number one is.
It is definitely DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, you're 100% right there. Hopkins versus Watkins. Okay, that's a really hotly debated topic amongst Clemson fans. I've heard it on the Roar a lot. People like to talk about this all the time. And I think most people actually give the edge to Sammy Watkins simply because of his explosiveness. And that's, there's a valid point. I'm not going to really argue with anybody there. But I will say, here's why I'm putting Hopkins on top. His hands were simply better. Okay. I never wondered if he was going to make the catch or not. If it was close, it was caught. All right. That's kind of what he did. I think I'm still a little bit bitter that Sammy Watkins dropped that kind of wide open touchdown right through his hands against the Gamecocks in one of the years where they beat us. Maybe I kind of hold that grudge against him a little bit. I don't know. But Hopkins showed consistent improvement, from year to year. Sammy's production kind of decreased in that year too, partly because he was suspended for 2 games as well. So I'm kind of taking all this and kind of, wrapping it in a nutshell and giving it to Hopkins as the guy. I'm also going to give Hopkins a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because in his first year, he was playing with Kyle Parker. He was not playing with Taj Boyd. Okay. So look, Kyle Parker was a decent quarterback for sure, but he wasn't Taj Boyd. He wasn't the gunslinger Taj Boyd was. So anyways, I'm going to give Hopkins, kind of taking all that into account, I'm going to put him number one on my list and call him the best receiver in Clemson history.
Well, I'm not going to fight you with it. I think both those guys, really all these guys on here, were amazing for the Clemson Tigers. And, it's been a great decade, really. Those were most of the guys from the decade other than Tuttle. But it's been great to watch those guys perform. Dabo Swinney, really, as a wide receivers coach. Jeff Scott kind of growing those guys from within and developing with them into the head coach that he is now, into now Jeff Scott's head coach position. Those guys have grown into NFL careers. Dabo Swinney and Jeff Scott have grown into, I'm sure Scott's going to be a great head coach as well. So it's really cool to see what's happened over the past decade. But that is our top 5 all-time Clemson wide receivers. Let us know what you think over in the comments section. If you agree or disagree with us, we'd like to know. And we'll have the replay up. If you miss anything or you didn't catch all of it, we'll have the replay up over on our YouTube and Facebook channel, so you can check that out. Al, we've got our special guest. It's segment number 3, and that's going to be Mark Childress coming on with way too early top 5 list. And that is the top 5 of college football. We're going to go through our top 5, and you let us know in the comments what you think. But while I'm bringing Mark on, Al, if you don't mind, would you go over to our segment 3 sponsor and let our viewers know about them?
Yeah, not a problem. Our segment 3 sponsor is Heating Cooling Services, Inc. They are family owned and operated, serving Anderson County and surrounding areas since 1980. Heating Cooling Services, Inc. is your residential and commercial comfort expert. Anything from preventative maintenance of your home HVAC system to overhauling a commercial chiller and anything in between. If you want to breathe easier and be nice and cool in your home or business this summer, give Heating Cooling Services, Inc. a call. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want to get in touch with Mark or Jason Trammell. Their number is 864-224-7655. Again, their number is 864-224-7655. They will take good care of you. I like dealing with good people. I've known them for a long time. They were actually able to help me out of a bind and save me a ton of money. I hope they would do the same for you. They will treat you right, and that is a big part of why I choose to go with people that I trust. So they will take good care of you. Mark Jason Trammell, Heating Cooling Services, Inc.
And speaking of Marks, we got Mark Childress on the line from 105.5 The Roar, WSPA News Channel 7, and the Tiger Tailgate Show. Mark Childress, welcome to the show.
What's going on, fellas? Great show tonight so far. I've enjoyed it.
We appreciate it, Mark, and always joining us. Again, this is round 2 with Alan Adams, so I'm just, giving you a heavy dose of Alan time right now.
Yeah, you can't get enough of Alan, man. He's a rock on the show for you, and it's an honor to be here with you, Alan, as always, man. You too, Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan. I mean, he's all right, Yeah.
I do what I can. Hey, I don't know if you guys noticed. If you're watching our show, check out Mark Childress over on the Roar's Facebook page. He came out and he invited me. I had some other things going, but he came out and had a watch party with Ellis Tolbert and Richmond Weaver for I believe it was the AFC Championship game, right? It was the Titans versus the Chiefs. A cool game there where you got to listen to them, just like you would see maybe in the college football playoffs, where ESPN has that separate channel where you can listen to people talk about the game while watching the game. Mark did kind of the same thing, and I thought it was really cool and exciting, and I hope he kind of does it for the Super Bowl. I think that would be fun. I don't know if he is or not, but Mark, tell us about your experience. How did you enjoy that?
Yeah, we had fun. It's kind of like the ESPN Megacast idea that they have, right? So Ellis, Richmond, and I, we sat in the Bronx studios and watched the Titans-Chiefs game, which ended up being a pretty good game throughout, and just chatted, right? I mean, sometimes it was talking about the plays. We talked a lot about Clemson football. Heck, man, we talked about the baseball cheating scandal and things like that. So the concept is just hang out with us and watch a game like you're sitting there with us, or we're in a sports bar, or hanging out on recliners in somebody's den, right? So we had a really good time yesterday. A bunch of people watched, and we'll have to see on the Super Bowl. I don't know if we're going to do that yet, but I've got some ideas around some of the college basketball tournament stuff coming up. So keep your eyes on the Roar, and you'll see more of that.
Oh, man, actually, I didn't even think about college basketball, but if you get 2 powerhouse college basketball teams fighting against each other in the NCAA tournament, and I'm just envisioning you 3 guys, and hopefully me too, in that studio, and there's like dropping a last second 3-pointer to win the game. That'd be some good video right there of just us going crazy there, or maybe just pulling for a Cinderella or whatever. I think it would be fun. It's getting closer to March and getting into that March Madness tournament. I know you've attended. This is kind of off script here, and I like to do this from time to time, really every show. But
Sorry, Mark.
I just thought of this. You were talking about maybe doing March Madness things. Clemson basketball team. They just went through kind of the Tobacco Road gauntlet, started with NC State, beat them at home, went on the road to face the North Carolina Tar Heels. They were 0-59, I believe, and then they won. Now they're 1-59. Really, some people say the least likeliest team to win in that scenario. Yeah. A lot of people said, well, you can't. It's a win. You can enjoy it. UNC fans were saying you can enjoy it, but everybody was hurt. And I said, well, hey, 59 years of that, I'm going to enjoy it. So Clemson won that game. Then they turn around. Shocker of all shockers, you were in the house for this game. Duke knocking off the big upset. They storm the court. Amazing scene there in Littlejohn Coliseum. Then they finish up the Tobacco Road gauntlet, not winning on the road against NC State. But what were your thoughts on this Tobacco Road kind of like tournament, I guess you could call it? What were your thoughts on how Clemson performed, and is this something that they can take going into the rest of the season?
I think they can. I mean, the effort level for this team has been fantastic, and they just haven't been making shots. And against North Carolina in the last couple of minutes, and then in overtime, and then pretty much throughout the Duke game, those shots started going in. And, making 3 or 4 extra shots a game can really be the difference between winning and losing. I feel like the effort's been there. The Tigers are getting somewhat healthy now. I'm hearing Bear is going to be out and maybe having to have another surgery. That's what Brownell said on Tiger Calls a little bit earlier. But the rotation depth is there, and the ball's going in the basket a little bit. I mean, they had a nightmare. I think it was the worst shooting percentage from the foul line in the Brad Brownell era against NC State. But that's a game They held NC State to 19 points under their average scoring so far this season. That's a game Clemson could have and probably should have won. This Wake Forest team likes to move the ball quickly. So if Clemson can control the pace tomorrow night, that game starts at 8. I will be down there again tomorrow night. We're season ticket holders. That should be a great ball game. And Clemson, again, with a win, gets to 4-4 in what is a logjam ACC. If you look at it, there's really only the top 2 teams with Duke and Louisville, and Florida State with the top 3 teams up there. And then there's a big bulk of teams that have 3, 4, 5 losses is the majority of the conference. Clemson can get to 4-4. That's probably going to have them in like 6th place in the conference, 8 games into the season in the conference season. That ain't bad.
Yeah, good insight there. And again, we're on the show, or Mark Childress is on the show with us to discuss all things Clemson football and Clemson basketball. We started off talking about Clemson basketball, but let's get into our way too early top 5 list with our special guest, Mark Childress from The Roar. Mark, I wanted to start off with you since you're the guest. We're going to start off with our number 1 team, and I'm hoping that your number 1 team is the same number 1 team that Alan and I have. But going into the 2020 season, now looking back over the 2019 season, looking at what players have declared for the NFL draft, what players ended up staying for their senior year, who is your preseason number 1 way too early poll?
Okay, so I am looking this through the lens of when we get to the end of the regular season next year, who do I think is going to be the number 1 team in the country? Okay, so I am going to give it that caveat at the beginning. I believe going into the college football playoffs in 2020 that Alabama will be the number 1 team in the country. And again, I'm looking at it through the lens that we saw Clemson view through this year, right? I mean, Clemson was number 3 in the college football playoffs this year because they, I'm using air quotes, didn't play anybody, didn't have the best out-of-conference schedule. They do have Notre Dame on the schedule next year. I've got Clemson a little bit further down in my preseason top 5 for next year, but I think Alabama rights the ship. They've got enough folks coming back. They've got Southern Cal is really the only out-of-conference team that they've got to worry about next year. LSU is going to be down next year. They seem to alternate years beating or losing to Auburn, so I feel like they'll take Auburn down next year. That's really all that they've got to worry about is LSU and Auburn on their schedule and a matchup with Georgia, who I don't think is going to be all that great. I think Alabama will be the number 1 team going into the college football playoffs next year.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you in that sense. If you really look at it, I know that I want to pick Clemson, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I am picking Clemson to be number 1. But realistically speaking, outside of my heart, outside of the orange-colored glasses, I can see the College Football Playoff Committee and the AP voters and the coaches poll voters doing the same thing they did to Clemson as they did last year and saying, oh, you don't play anybody, Florida State's down, Louisville's still rebuilding, Wake Forest is no good, Boston College is no good. Who are they going to beat? They're going to probably, let's say they face Virginia Tech. Again, it could very easily be a 25th ranked Virginia Tech. And so Clemson would have really no good wins in that sense. And so will they stay at number 1? If they are number 1, it's hard to say. I think that in this sense, I want to say Clemson will be number 1. I hope that this past season has kind of maybe opened the eyes for the Clemson staff and said, hey, maybe we don't need to go so quickly to our 5th string guys. Maybe we need to hold some people in a little bit longer, score a couple more points, show our dominance, and hey, not only that, but keep that cohesion together, keep that unity of the starters together. That I think sometimes bit Clemson on the bad end because of Trevor Lawrence or whoever not really having a lot of experience with each other, or at least a full 4 quarters of experience with each other. But Alan, what you got for number 1?
Well, first of all, I want to say I actually kind of thought this the opposite from Mark. I was actually kind of going into my preseason top 4, like before anybody plays a game, who do I have as far as my top teams in the country? I have Clemson there. I think their biggest question mark going into next year is, the offensive line and defensive back. And rightfully so. I mean, they lost 4 seniors across the offensive line. Losing 4 seniors across an offensive line is enough to cripple a lot of teams. But Clemson, the reason they play these backups, is because they want to get them ready when their time comes. And I think that's going to be a big help come next year. I think the fact that we have Travis Etienne returning. We have Trevor Lawrence returning. Okay, I know Trevor Lawrence kind of went out on a bad note this year, but they all know he's still Trevor Lawrence. Okay, and we still have some good receivers to play with when you have an Etienne and you have a number one recruiting class come in, or what may end up being a 2 or 3 recruiting class, whatever. These guys are the defense should be a little bit better, especially across the line. I think you'll see a lot more 4-man front next year. And Venable's obviously going to make do with whatever he has and get the best out of it for sure. But with all those weapons, potential superstars, I expect Clemson to be right back in the playoff. And, I think the fact that they're going to have Notre Dame on their schedule, who's going to be ranked highly because Notre Dame always is, I think that's going to help us as well, assuming, of course, Clemson wins that game. And I personally don't believe Clemson cares one bit about blowing teams out more than they have and leaving those starters in longer. I think Clemson is going to do what Clemson does. Now, if they were to lose an early game and think, you know what, if we want to make it back to these playoffs, if they lose at Notre Dame, then they may start leaving somebody in there because they're going to have to. But unless they get the L on their schedule, they're going to keep doing what they do and rotate those players and have them ready so that they're going to be ready for next year.
Obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And in that sense, going to the national championship, 4 out of the last 5 years, winning 2 out of 4 is not a bad scenario for the Tigers again going into this year. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you look at my number 2, kind of to piggyback off of what Mark said, Mark had Alabama number 1. I put Alabama number 2. You've got Najee Harris coming back, Devonta Smith coming back. Mac Jones showed he's more than capable of being a good quarterback. And then they've got a dynamic guy, true freshman Brice Young, who battled it out with DJ Uiagalelei for that top spot in the the quarterback position. And so I think that Alabama is going to have, really maybe they might have a quarterback battle, but even if they don't, Mac Jones is going to be able to service the team well. And like I said, they've got the wide receivers there. Waddle's still going to be there. They do lose Jerry Jeudy, but I think Alabama's going to be right back there. And I know, Alan, I think you said for your number 2 was Alabama as well.
Yeah, I have Alabama at number 2 for all the reasons you stated. I'd like to give you a big spiel and tell you something that you didn't know, but you pretty much took every single one of my talking points there. So I think Alabama's going to be right back in it, and I see them as taking over the West again. I have them at number 2.
So, Mark, give us your number 2 and number 3.
Yeah, so for me, and again, it looks like I looked at this a little bit differently than you guys, but I think that's okay. I think Ohio State is the number 2 team in the country. And again, the lens I'm looking at it as, where do I feel like these teams will be ranked going into the college football playoffs next year? Ohio State's got an intriguing game out of conference at Oregon in the second week of the season. I think Oregon's definitely going to take a step back, losing their star QB and so much on the defensive or on the offensive line, and should be an easy win for Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to cruise next year in a Big 12 that's not going to be quite as good as it was this year. And then I've got Clemson in there at number 3. I think you guys are making a lot of points, but I will say this. I don't think Dabo and the staff is going to make any changes at all on the way that they play their players. They're going to keep on playing the backups. They're going to keep on playing the second and third strings. I don't think they're going to try to leave anybody in there longer to pump up their Heisman numbers for ETN or for Trevor Lawrence, or to show the committee that they're actually a little bit better than people think that they are. I don't think they're worried about anybody except Clemson. I think they'll do the exact same thing that they did last year. Again, I think they're a fantastic team. I think it's going to be a coin flip between those top 3 teams as far as who gets ranked number 1 going into the college football playoffs next year. But it's Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3 for me.
And really not much different for me, just a little bit just kind of swapped around there. I have Clemson, Alabama, and then Ohio State. Ryan Day did a great job in his first year. That Ohio State team was just a very difficult game for Clemson. I think that was something that really wasn't talked about a lot, but Clemson played World War III in that PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, and then had to turn around and watch LSU basically sit on the sidelines in the fourth quarter. And that was something that Clemson was able to do last year. Mm-hmm. And while Alabama was sitting here fighting out, Kyler Murray's trying to claw his way back into the game. I think Clemson took advantage of it last year and was able to just dominate Alabama. but I think LSU did the same for Clemson as well. Those guys, they said they were beat up and bruised. They loved it. They thrived off of it, but there's no denying that it was definitely something that might have taken a little more than 2 weeks to recover from that beating. But Clemson was able to get away from it, and I think Ohio State's going to be there again, even though they lose J.K. Dobbins. You've got Justin Fields coming back for round 2, and Ohio State recruits great. So they're going to get more big-time recruits. They do lose Chase Young but and Jeffrey Okunda, but they're going to continue to reload, much like Alabama's of the world, much like Clemson's of the world now. Thankfully, we can say that as Tiger fans, that Clemson just reloads. Clemson's definitely going to do that on the defensive line. But I've got Ohio State, and then for me, my number 4, and I know, Mark, when I was on your show in the studio, Paul called in and he just got all over me for picking this team. And then I came back and I said, well, if I can't pick this team, then I'm going to pick LSU. But I picked Georgia last year to do well, and then Paul called in and jumped all over me for picking Georgia. So then I said, well, I really think Coach O has got some things going with that recruiting class, and he's a great coach. So I would give LSU, and John and Mark agreed with me on the episode there. But again, I mean, tell me who's not going to be there other than Georgia. I mean, I guess you could say Florida, but in the sense that Wisconsin loses their starting running back, Penn State loses their go-to wide receiver, Oregon loses their quarterback. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not crazy to say 2 SEC teams are going to be up there. And for me, I don't see it being Florida. It can't be 2 people from the West, so I've got to go with Georgia. I know a lot. I know I'm going to get beat up about it. But Alan, what do you got?
Well, actually, I get to go back and tell you my number 3 because I didn't get to tell you my number 3. So I'm picking Ohio State, man. Me and you are on the same page here. I have I have Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. That's my top 3 as well. I think the fact that this is a quarterback game, and the fact they have Justin Fields automatically puts them up there by default. They lost a lot of production, obviously, on offense, but with his ability to make and extend plays, I feel like they can make do. With all the 4- and 5-star backups they have that are just going to kind of move into those positions for sure. Losing Heisman contender Chase Young, like you said, that's going to hurt a little bit on defense, but the Buckeyes always seem to find that next great defensive end. And I have no doubt they'll probably do the same thing this year. They'll have a little competition in the East, as I'll get to in just one second, but they'll be a factor again. Speaking of my number 4, I actually have Penn State as my number 4. I didn't think a lot of people would have that. They return an awful lot of talent on offense. I know you said they lost their receiver, but again, they still have their quarterback. They got talented running backs, and they have quarterback Sean Clifford coming back. I think that's a big deal. They've recruited well under James Franklin, and that's no surprise. I think the only surprise is whether he's following the rules to get those recruits. But you know what? It's all good. It's the James Franklin that college football loves, right? So, he's kind of in the news for the wrong reason right now, which he's accustomed to. He's being sued, for the hazing rituals and all those kind of things. But hey, if nothing crazy comes from all that, assuming he is the coach and everything is just kind of hunky dory up there in Penn State, come season time, I think they can, compete with or beat Ohio State. They get Ohio State coming to Happy Valley this year as well. So a good offense led by a linebacker, on defense, Micah Parsons. I love Micah Parsons. I think he's just an All-American type of player. Clemson actually recruited him when he was a 5-star defensive end. And he goes to Penn State, ends up transitioning to linebacker, and he's just all over the place, killing people. So I think good offense, returning quarterback, a lot of good running backs, and a decent defense. I think they can make some noise, and I'm going to have them up there at number 4.
It's not a successful season unless you're being sued, Alan. It just happens to be that James Franklin is being sued for hazing, and Dabo Swinney, I believe, he got threatened with a lawsuit over praying. But, completely different scenarios there. But, hey, that's what successful coaches do. They get a little bit in trouble with the law there, even though our coach is a lot different than what you're speaking of. But, Mark, what you got? I believe I think we're at 4 and 5 for you.
Yeah, so let me read you guys a schedule for next year, and it's a schedule of my number 4 team, okay? Eastern Washington, Kentucky, South Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Missouri, New Mexico State, Florida State. And then they've got games against Georgia and LSU. Going with the Florida Gators at number 4. who can literally just arrive on a bus and win 10 games next year, right? So then they've got LSU at home, and they've got Georgia in Jacksonville. I think something's broken in that Georgia program. I really do. I did not like the fact that so many players sat out the bowl game. I did not like what Kirby Smart said after the game, where some of his players didn't seem to be prioritizing the team as much as they were prioritizing themselves. You're losing Jake Fromm. You're losing DeAndre Swift. You're losing a bunch on the defensive side as well. I just think Georgia's going to take a step back next year. I think they're going to lose to Alabama. I don't think LSU is going to be near as good next year. So Florida is literally, to me, got to find a way to beat LSU at home and or Georgia in Jacksonville. And they're going to be an 11-1 team, and they're going to be going to the SEC championship game against Alabama. So I think that the Florida Gators, again, you've got to have two. I think what you said, Morgan, makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's going to be two SEC teams in the top 5 in just about every possible scenario out there, unless things just get crazy. I'm going to go with the Florida Gators as that second team this year. And then number 5, flip a coin. I like the Penn State pick, Allen. I'm going for the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma doesn't have the toughest schedule in the world next year. And, their tougher games come a little bit earlier on in the schedule. So they've got Tennessee, which could be an interesting one, but they play Texas on October, right? That's really their toughest game of the season. And even if they were to drop that game to Texas on October 10th, it's early enough in the year, I think, that they rally back in there and kind of do what Oklahoma seems to always do, which is backdoor their way into the college football playoff there on that last weekend and get in. So I've got Oklahoma as my number 5 team.
And Alan, finish us up with your last couple of teams there.
Yeah, I'm going to give you my number 5. Actually, Mark, I agree with you a lot on Florida. It took a lot for me to leave them off this list. I kind of thought nobody would be really thinking about them, but I like where you're going with that. My number 5, I know they lost their quarterback. I have Oregon actually there right now. They're coming off a great Rose Bowl victory. They returned 9 starters on a pretty nasty defense as is, which is significant, talking about how good they were this past year. They'll begin the year, obviously, with some people marking their defense as one of, if not the best in the country, I think. A lot of times the Pac-12 teams don't get that kind of love. But look, it's no small task to replace a Justin Herbert for sure. But one of the main reasons I have them at number 5, besides that defense, is the fact that they recruit well, and I think they're going to land a quality transfer. It seems like all the quarterbacks on God's green earth are transferring right now, trying to get a better position. Jamie Newman obviously ended up at Georgia. I think they're going to land a transfer there, but it's Oregon. People are going to want to play in that offense. So, I think, most people think offense when they think of the Ducks, aside from uniforms, of course. But the defense is going to be no slouch this year for sure, as they have the chance to be a Pac-12 contender and make them a contender for the playoffs, which is something they hadn't done very much. So I'm going to take Oregon at number 5.
And I mean, I really don't disagree with what you guys are saying for sure. I know you guys, like I said, I knew I was going to get kind of some flack for picking Georgia, just like I did last year. And I know that they got a lot of things going on outside of the football field. But I mean, they've got Jamie Newman, as you said. Fromm, to me, couldn't hit the targets in big games, and I think Jamie Newman's going to be able to do that. They just picked up Todd Monken, who's going to be able to kind of speed up the offense. It might put a lot of stress on that Georgia defense because they're not going to be on the time. They're not going to win time of possession by any means with this new offensive coordinator. He's going to get on the field and off the field, kind of like a Chad Morris type guy. So, but I really see Jamie Newman flourishing in that sense. I'd like to see him be successful. I mean, this is an ACC transplant over there. It'd be interesting to see what he can do in the SEC. I do really like Kyle Trask for sure. I think he's way better than Felipe Franks, who actually somebody sent me this that he transferred to, I believe, Arkansas, which I didn't know. That's correct. But that is a very interesting thing. I mean, if you look at the transfer portal right now, if you printed it out, it'd be like 35 pages long with 10 players per page. It's amazing how many people are trying to find a new home for the 2020 season. But for me, again, Georgia, number 4. Oklahoma, I agree with Mark Childress in that sense that Oklahoma, get this, Lincoln Riley's first true freshman recruit to be the quarterback. I'm not true freshman, he's a sophomore, but it's his first recruit to ever be his quarterback. Every quarterback he's had so far in Oklahoma has been a transfer that he didn't recruit. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. How will Spencer Rattler do in that system, well, we know it's a Heisman creating system, and that Lincoln Riley's going to he's probably going to flourish in that sense as well. I hear a lot of people saying a lot of big things about Rattler and how great he's going to be, a big 5-star guy that's just going to destroy defenses. Well, what's left of defenses, or what is mustard of defenses in the Big 12? But I think Oklahoma's going to be there again. And really, like I said, for me, I thought about Penn State, but KJ Hamler's gone. I thought about Wisconsin. Jonathan Taylor's gone. I thought about Oregon, but Justin Herbert's gone. So for me, only team that I really feel like I could put in there would be, like what you guys said, was Florida and the Gators. I think they have a chance to take it over in Jacksonville and become that team. I know you don't like to say anything about Georgia because your time in Atlanta there, Mark. But I think that even though all the things going off the field, I think with the quarterback they have, like Alan said, having a good quarterback is half the battle, and I think they definitely have one for sure. Talking about quarterbacks, before I let both of you guys go, before we end the show tonight, talking about quarterbacks, there's one that's dear to all of our hearts, and that is Chase Brice. He elected to transfer and play his final season somewhere else. As far as I know, I'm not seeing the decision that he's made. Does anybody know where he's going or where they think he might be going? Mark, I'll start with you.
Yeah, why you start with me, man? Let's pull out the crystal ball, right? And and try and figure it out. It's going to be interesting. I think Clemson fans would really love to see Chase Brice go down to South Florida with Jeff Scott. Obviously, there's some familiarity there. I feel like if that was the decision that was going to be made, that it would have been announced quickly, right? Hey, I'm transferring and I'm following Coach Scott down to USF. Seems like it would be a great fit for him, and obviously he would have have somebody in his corner from day one. I think Chase Brice has got the ability to play just about anywhere. You would think that he would want to stay in the Southeast. Past that, I think it's a roll of the dice. So I'll still, hold out, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, saying USF. And oh, by the way, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the transfer portal right now. Chase Brice is one of them. Lincoln Riley's not necessarily done yet, right? I mean, I know he's got Spencer Rattler, and I think that's probably going to be his QB next year. But you never know. He might go and pick somebody off the vine, off of that transfer portal, and go with him next year. He could do a lot worse than Chase Brice.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Man, I'm so glad Morgan went with you first. Okay, obviously, this is something we just have no idea about. I agree with you what you said about South Florida. There's a lot of familiarity with Jeff Scott and everything. I'm not sure, he's exactly what they're looking for to run that offense down there. But I think he can thrive in almost any offense. I think some are better suited than others. But I kind of want to think about this. People wanted to put him to Georgia like it was a done deal. He was going to Georgia, and that some of people were even saying that after they got Jamie Newman. And of course, it makes sense. He's from around there, so that's no big deal. Will he go there and compete with Jamie Newman and maybe try to get a spot at Georgia? I don't know. I certainly hope he doesn't do that. Obviously, I have a little bit of a disdain for Georgia. I hate to tell my Georgia Bulldog fans that I know and love so much. But I honestly, and again, if you're going to pick South Florida, okay, I'm going to kind of go and hit Oregon. I was talking, they need a quarterback, so maybe he goes to Oregon. I think he'd be able to do well. Justin Herbert did a great job over there. I like what I see from Chase Brice. He's a big time competitor. He'll lay it all out there for you. I think he would be a great replacement for them, and an upgrade from what they have on campus right now, I'm sure. And hopefully he can run that offense well for him. I would love to see what he could do in that style of offense. Obviously a long way to go for him. But Morgan, you brought this topic up. I'm sure you have some brilliant thoughts that we just got to hear.
Well, there's one team he can't go to, and that's the one down the highway in the middle of the state.
Yeah.
We can't have another player go down there and basically disappear in their final season playing. So I'm going to say he's not going to South Carolina. I hope he doesn't. I can honestly see him going, and I know this would be detrimental to, well, I'll say detrimental. I know this would be a difficult decision to make for Chase Brice, but I mean, who's to say Florida State doesn't need a quarterback? Blackman's not somebody who they really had any success with, and the guy that they had recruited through Willie Taggart, I believe, jumped ship and decided to go to Georgia Tech. I believe something similar to that. So they don't know who they're going to have as quarterback. So Florida State could be a contender out there. But yeah, I mean, I think that A lot of people are still saying they think he's going to be at Georgia, but I just don't see that with Newman now there. I don't think that's going to be good for him. For me, if you go to South Florida, that's kind of like, I don't know if that's necessarily an NFL move. I think going to South Florida is more of a, okay, I'm going to be an offensive coordinator one day, or a quarterback's coach one day, or maybe even a head coach one day. So it depends on what his future career, what his goals are. Because I think if you go to South Florida, that's obviously a rebuilding effort there. There's some strong ties for Jeff Scott out there, and it would be a great kind of familiar place for him to, or a familiar, coach to follow. But I don't necessarily think that'll be some place that'll help his stock at all, getting into the NFL. So, I never thought of this, but the Oklahoma idea that Mark just threw out is a very interesting one. I mean, who's to say Lincoln Riley is going to stay with a guy he actually recruited? I mean, that's old school talk. We might as well just recruit transfers. He's kind of the Brad Brownell of college football quarterbacks when it comes to just grabbing transfers anywhere he can that have 1 or 2 years left. So who knows what'll happen? We all wish Chase Brice the best of luck. Go Tigers, and everything that he's done for the community and for the Tiger organization and the university. It's been great to see, and sticking it out and graduating. And maybe that's the case. Maybe he's holding his pick, his selection until he graduates. I believe he has to wait till May for that. So maybe he's holding on to that. We'll see. Again, no matter where he goes, we wish him the best of luck. So Chase family, if you're watching this, we wish you the best of luck wherever you select, and you'll always be a Tiger in our hearts. But again, we're talking to Mark Childress from 105.5 The Roar and the Tiger Tailgate Show and WSBA Channel 7 and wherever else you see him on. He's everywhere, and he's on the Morgan Thomas Show with Big Al tonight, and we appreciate that. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. A little bit later than we promised, but so I'll let you go get to bed because I know you got to get to work tomorrow.
Yeah, hey, man, thanks a lot. And again, the Mark Childress Show on The Roar, Wednesday nights from 7 to 9, and I also simulcast it on their Facebook page. So hope to see everybody Wednesday night. And Alan, Morgan, an honor as always, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it again, Mark. Thank you so much. Al, that's it for episode 53. We still got a ton of people watching over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we appreciate the support. Hey, if you haven't already, make sure you like the video. It still helps with our SEO and getting this video out to other Clemson fans who might not have seen it so far. So make sure you like the video and you share the video. If you missed anything from our live show tonight, make sure that you check in on our YouTube page or our Facebook page. I always go in and edit the show, clip it out so that you can see little sections. You don't have to watch the full hour-and-a-half show. You can check out just a small clip from our show. Any section that you like, any section that you miss, you can go check that out. Easy to find over on our YouTube channel. We're almost at 800 subscribers on our YouTube channel. We're on the road to 1,000. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe right now, and we would really appreciate that. We're getting close, Al, to 1,900 over on Facebook. We're on a road for 2,000 there. So 2,000 Facebook, almost 1,000 on YouTube. Man, the support has been great, and a little over 1 year of work. Al, thank you so much for joining me again, as always. Thank you so much, Facebook, YouTube, for watching, Twitter as well. And like I said, this is the end or the start of the season 2 for us. There's some Clemson basketball things going on. There's more recruiting stuff that we're going to get into as the offseason continues. And we're looking forward to, really, Al, there's only 5 weeks left until spring practice starts again. Man, it's crazy, but college football rarely sleeps. This is a time where you get to enjoy some basketball, but get ready for the National Signing Day, what's left of it, really, because Clemson signed most of the guys they already want. But then, like I said, get your new orange outfit ready for the spring game coming up very, very soon. It'll be here before you know it, and we're excited about it. But we hope you enjoyed watching and listening. Please check us out, again, wherever you may watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, The Roar, anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's it for this week. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas.
And I'm Alan Adams.
And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.